You are not lazy, you're not useless, and you're not weak. You are simply living out the parts of life that your parents and generations before them were unable to live fully. You are carrying pain that does not belong to you. There is a part of you, soft, sensitive, yearning for unconditional love, that were left behind too early. No one meant to hurt you, but no one taught you how to feel safe either. No one truly saw you. And in that very moment, the child within you began to retreat from the light. But it did not disappear. It stayed in the shadows, in every emotional reaction you cannot explain, in the deep exhaustion you cannot name, in the way you blame yourself for not being okay like everyone else. It whispers in the fear of abandonment, in the feeling of never being enough, in the prolonged silence that lingers where warmth should have been. Carl Jung called this the child archetype, the psychological origin point, the place that holds not only your early pain, but also the untouched potential you've never lived out. And if he could sit beside you today, he would not ask you to be stronger. He would look you in the eye and ask, when did you lose yourself? And what would happen if you were to go back? If you listened? If you finally opened your heart and held that child, not to fix it, but to become the person it has always been waiting for? That journey is not a technique. It is an awakening, and it begins with one honest question to yourself. Whose life have I been living, and what part of me is still being left behind? Number 1. Who is the inner child in Jung's system? When you close your eyes and think back to yourself as a child, you might see a blurry image. A child who once loved life, who once cried from being misunderstood, who once felt excitement at new things, but slowly learned to shrink themselves to fit in with the world. That image is not just a memory. It is a living part of you, pulsing, deeply influencing who you are today. This is the part Carl Gustav Jung called the child archetype. In Jung's analytical psychology, the inner child is not merely an emotional idea. It is a symbol rich with sacred and spiritual significance. It represents the beginning of psychic life, the unrealized potential, and the original self, pure, unconditioned by family or society. In the archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung wrote, "The child is potentiality itself, the inexhaustible source of all that is new in life." This is not a naive figure tied only to pleasant memories. The inner child is the root of the uncorrupted self, the home of the undiminished essence. It is the source of intuition, curiosity, unconditional love, and the capacity to connect deeply with oneself and with others. But Jung also emphasized that the image of the child is not only positive, it is also the container of early wounds, loneliness, the feeling of abandonment, and the shame of never being truly seen or accepted for who we are. To understand the inner child more deeply through Jung's lens, we must look at the structure of the human psyche as he described it. It consists of the conscious mind, the personal unconscious, and, deeper still, the collective unconscious. It is in that deepest layer, the realm of ancient archetypes, that the child archetype appears as an eternal symbol of rebirth, hope, and inner resilience. Jung explained, "The child motif represents unconscious. It does not belong to the past. It is alive in the choices you make every day. The presence of the inner child in each of us is not just an emotional recollection. It is a living psychological reality. That is why when we are rejected, we do not just feel sad, we collapse. When someone criticizes us, we do not just feel displeased, we feel worthless. These reactions do not belong to the adult you are now. They come from the inner child rising, saying, "I was hurt like this before, and I have never been healed." Jung believed that if we do not return and recognize this child, we will continue to be led by old wounds disguised as new decisions. This child is not only a personal symbol. In the collective unconscious, it is also the image of the Savior, of hope, and of rebirth. Jung compared the child archetype to the divine child in various cultures, such as Horus in Egyptian mythology, Krishna in Hinduism, or the Christ child in Christianity. These figures not only represent beginnings, but also redemption that comes from within the self. The child in you, therefore, is not weak. It is a forgotten sacred source of life. Jung called it the beginning of individuation, of becoming the self, the starting point of the journey of becoming fully who you are, born through confrontation with the dark. The paradox is this: the more we try to grow up and escape old pain, the further we drift from our true selves. That child does not need you to fix it. It needs you to listen. When you revisit a painful childhood memory, not to drown in victimhood, but to face it with your present eyes, where you are safe enough to hold that child, that is transformation. Jung never taught us to eliminate the darkness. He taught that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in that darkness, the child is still waiting, not to be rescued, but to be acknowledged. Because the moment you return, not to scold it, not to fix it, but to say, "I see you, I'm here with you," that is the moment the inner child begins to believe it no longer has to carry this loneliness alone. Number 2, the wound of the child, the body still remembers. If the inner child is the original potential, what forced it to retreat and hide in the unconscious? The answer lies in early wounds, not the dramatic events you always remember, but the quiet, repeated, invisible hurts that run deep enough to reshape your entire perception of yourself and the world. These are not isolated incidents, but emotional environments where safety was lacking, where legitimate needs went unheard, and love became conditional rather than a natural presence. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Collected Works, Volume 9, I. And for many of us, that pain began before we were old enough to name it. When you learned that being good earned love, being smart won approval, and being quiet made you likable, you also began to cut off the most alive parts of yourself, just to survive. You were not taught how to listen to your emotions. You were encouraged to dismiss them. No one told you that anger is normal, that sadness is valid, that longing for affection is worthy of respect. Instead, you were taught to be strong, stop crying, do well so mommy will love you. And from that point on, your body remembered, even if your mind forgot. Have you ever wondered why a throwaway comment can make you crumble? Why do you feel irrational fear of rejection or the constant need to prove your worth every minute of the day? That's because early emotional experiences, even small ones, shaped your nervous system. Today's neuroscience confirms what Jung touched on a century ago. Our bodies hold on to what the mind tries to bury. When you were 5 and your mother got angry because you spilled water, no one taught you that mistakes are a part of life. You only learned, I am the problem. And that child continues to live in you, reliving that feeling every time you make even the smallest error. Picture this familiar moment. You send a message to someone and they don't reply. You tell yourself, they're probably busy. But minutes later, your mind spirals. Did I do something wrong? Are they mad at me? Your logic knows this makes no sense, but your body signals danger. That's body memory, etched not in words, but in sensations. A racing heart, a tight throat, a knot in your stomach. Jung would say you are not reacting as the adult you are. You are reacting as the child who once felt abandoned. And the truth is, in many families, these wounds do not come from malice. They come from long-standing emotional disconnection. Parents might feed you, educate you, and provide every material need, but never offer love through eye contact, deep listening, or a simple hug with no reason. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung described his own childhood experience, where adults felt distant, rigid, and rule-bound. That sense of emotional separation led him to explore his psyche as an inner world. He never described himself as dramatically wounded, but the absence of emotional connection shaped the very foundation of his spiritual journey. So if you're reading reason to be strong, it's permission to be safely soft. Number 3, the adult masks are how we protect the child. If the previous part helped us recognize that the inner child is still alive and reactive, this part helps us begin to understand why so many mature behaviors are psychological armor the child inside us learned to wear to survive. These masks, no matter how strong, composed, or competent they seem, are the protective strategies of a child who was never truly healed. You may think you've moved on from your past, but ask yourself, are you living as a free human being, or are you still carefully hiding a fragile part of you that was never allowed to be seen? Carl Jung wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." CW4, para 574. In truth, much of what we call personality is a defense system built through a chain of survival adaptations. The perfectionist may have been a child, praised only when everything was flawless. The peacemaker may have grown up in a tense household where conflict meant danger. The withdrawn one may have been betrayed and learned that connection leads to hurt. The one who always seems strong may have been taught that weakness is shameful. These masks appear as strength, but in reality, they are unmistakable signs of unresolved pain. Do you see yourself somewhere in these patterns? Think of a recent situation. You received praise at work, achieved something noteworthy, but instead of feeling joy, you felt empty or terrified of being found out. Does that sound familiar? That's imposter syndrome, the feeling of merely performing successfully. But that sensation does not arise from your present. It comes from a child who was never trusted, who was doubted, who had to work twice as hard to earn recognition. Your nervous system, conditioned by years of scrutiny, no longer knows how to feel safe in moments of validation. Another example. You're the one who always mediates conflicts in your group. You're great at listening and helping others, but you feel drained and can't bring yourself to say no. What's happening? Behind that considerate nature is a child who believed their existence only had value if they kept others comfortable. And if they voiced their own needs, they might be abandoned. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their souls." CW12, paragraph 126. These masks are how we avoid facing the wounded parts of our souls. Have you ever felt that if you stopped pushing through, if you let go of pleasing others, there would be nothing left tethering you to the world? If you have, you are not alone. Many people go their entire lives not knowing they are surviving, not connecting. The saddest part is this. Society often rewards these masks. The perfectionist is seen as professional. The overly strong one is seen as a leader. The one who endures everything is called resilient. But no one sees the body running on empty, the heart constantly clenched, the mind that never gets to rest. We don't need to scream or rebel to prove we're in pain. Sometimes, the longest silence is the loudest cry. Carl Jung never said these mechanisms were bad. He understood they were survival tools. But he also warned that if we don't bring them into consciousness, they become tyrants, silent dictators. He wrote, "As long as the complex is not made conscious, it behaves like an autonomous being." CW8, Parcella 253. In other words, if our pain stays in the dark, it will act on its own, controlling us without our awareness. The paradox is this. The adult masks that once helped us survive become prisons later in life. They make it hard to relax, to rest, to love with an open heart. Because to love, we must open. And to open, we must feel safe. But the child in us, who never felt safe, will respond with suspicion, avoidance, or control. Ask yourself, how many times have you avoided telling the truth for fear of disappointing others? How many times have you stayed on the sidelines out of fear of rejection? How often have you pretended to be fine so no one would see your vulnerability? These are all outcomes of survival strategies, not wrong, but outdated. And you have the power to choose a new way. Not by tearing off the mask, but by looking at it with kindness. When Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming oneself, He never meant abandoning the past. He meant integrating it. You don't need to stop being a perfectionist, but you do need to recognize that perfectionism is not you. It's a strategy. And now that you're safer, more mature, you can choose whether to keep using it or to set it down. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And to do that, we must first find the courage to remove the mask." We've now reached the halfway point of today's journey. Your presence here is a real encouragement for us as we work to bring the true depth of Carl Jung's philosophy to more people. So please like and share this video to help spread these lessons to your friends and loved ones. Or leave a comment saying, "I honor my life," if you're ready for the next part of this journey. Number 4. The healing process. What It's about taking that child by the hand and slowly walking into the light for the first time, not alone. So if Jung were alive today, what would he advise you? First, he would say, begin by listening. Not just with your ears, but with full presence. When you feel triggered, panicked, or frozen by something seemingly small, don't force yourself to calm down or pull it together. Acknowledge instead. This is an old fear surfacing, not because you're weak, but because a part of you has never been told, you're okay, you're safe, you're no longer alone. One of the methods Jung suggested for engaging the unconscious is through dialogue with archetypes, living symbolic images in the psyche. The inner child is one of the most powerful of these. That's why writing a letter to your inner child is a deeply healing practice. You can begin by writing from your present self to your childhood self. Picture that child sitting across from you, eyes still innocent, but filled with the fear of being forgotten. Write to them with kindness, using the voice you never heard when you were little. Tell them you've come back, that you're done running, and that you're staying. Here's a question for you. If you could say just one sentence to your childhood self today, what would it be? Another practice Jung would support is re-establishing a sense of safety, not through dramatic change, but through daily gestures. A warm cup of tea you make for yourself is no longer just a relaxing habit. It becomes a whisper to your inner child. You are worthy of care. A soft blanket, an evening off without guilt, the courage to say no without apology. These are ways you rewire a nervous system that once confused safety with self-sacrifice. Jung once said, "What we resist persists." CW 10, para 519. That's why when we try to get over our wounds by ignoring them, by pretending we're fine, by overachieving, by loving harder, by staying endlessly busy, the inner child only feels more abandoned. It doesn't need you to become a superhero. It only needs you to be there in the moments when it feels most afraid. A deeper practice is learning to speak gently to yourself when you're hurt. When someone makes you feel invisible, instead of scolding yourself, "Why are you being so sensitive?" try placing a hand over your chest and saying, "I know, this feeling is familiar. This is an old fear. It's not my fault." In that moment, you break the cycle of automatic reaction and begin to form a new relationship with yourself. You're no longer reacting unconsciously. You're choosing your response. That is awareness. That is awakening. What do you usually say to yourself when you make a mistake? Whose voice does your inner monologue resemble? Is it kind? Or does it echo the judgments you once heard from someone else? Carl Jung believed that healing is not just personal. It is part of the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole. In that process, every wound has meaning. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." CW 363, paragraph 131. But it's also at that precise point, when we stop denying, stop resisting, stop dividing ourselves, that integration begins. No more adult me battling wounded me. Instead, there is us, coexisting, continuing. The healing path Jung laid out has no shortcut, but it is real, it is deep, and it begins not when you ask, "How do I stop hurting?" but when you begin to ask, "What is this pain trying to teach me?" Because in the end, as Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. CW 10, para 177. Number 5. Reparenting. Becoming the parent you once needed. After you've listened to your inner child, after you've peeled away the masks, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is a new space, a place where you can begin to live differently. Carl Jung called this a spiritual rebirth, a core part of the individuation process, the journey of becoming whole. But how do you move from simply recognizing the wound to living with it lovingly? That's where the concept of reparenting, becoming the parent you once needed, comes in. Imagine this. A part of you never truly grew up, not because you're immature, but because your growing up process was interrupted. You learned how to read, how to work, how to meet expectations, but you never learned how to care for your emotions, protect your boundaries, or simply comfort yourself when in pain. That's not your fault. But now, with awareness, you can become the first and only person who truly shows up for that small, scared part of you. Jung once wrote, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. When parents have not healed their inner child, they unconsciously pass on unresolved pain. And if you're hearing this now, chances are you're the first in your family to realize it, which means you're not just healing yourself, you're doing sacred work, breaking the generational cycle of unconscious suffering. Reparenting is not a with time, space, and love. Reparenting is not indulgence or doing whatever you feel like. On the contrary, it is disciplined compassion. It's the balance between love and guidance. Like a good father who sets limits to protect his child, and a good mother who holds the child when they cry, you too learn to set boundaries for yourself without shame, and to be gentle with yourself when you're vulnerable, without guilt. Carl Jung believed that within each of us lives a collective of archetypes: the mother, the father, the child, the wise elder, the rebel. Reparenting is how you activate the inner mother and father, allowing them to guide you from within. He never wanted you to eliminate the child. He wanted you to live with it, care for it, and learn from it. The child is the potential future, he wrote. That's why reparenting is not just healing. It's how we free the potential that has been locked away in the past. Have you ever said, "I don't know how to love myself"? Reparenting is the answer. When you make time to eat well, to sleep on time, to not work until collapse, that is loving yourself. When you allow yourself to rest without guilt, that is loving yourself. When you stop judging your emotions and simply acknowledge them, that is loving yourself. And when you stand by yourself, even when no one else does, that is the highest act of love, mature, conscious, and brave. I invite you to try something. Write yourself a letter, not from sadness, but from tenderness. Write as if to a child who just got through a long day. Don't worry about poetic words, just be honest. Say, "I see how hard you're trying. I know you're tired. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. From now on, I will stay." Don't wait until you feel perfect to begin loving yourself. That day will never come. You love yourself amid the imperfection, amid the overlaps of old pain and emerging strength. And just like a child needs consistency, so do you. This nourishment must be repeated each day, not because it's fast, but because it's real. Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And reparenting is that choice. A quiet choice, but powerful enough to change your entire spiritual journey. And if you've ever felt like I'm starting too late, remember this. The child in you never blames you for arriving late. It just celebrates that, finally, you came. We're often taught that we must grow up, be strong, and move forward. But rarely are we taught that sometimes the true path of growing up is the journey back. Back to the part that was left behind. Back to the eyes that once looked up, waiting for a hug. Back to the small voice that once wondered, "Am I lovable?" Carl Jung never asked us to reject the darkness. He believed that it is within the darkness that we find the soul's deepest light. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. We do not become whole by denying our wounds, but by making them part of our awakening story. Your inner child is not weak. It is the beginning of truth, a source of life that has never been extinguished, only forgotten. And every time you listen, every time you hold it close, every time you give it the love it once lacked, you are not just healing the past. You are liberating the future. So don't wait until you're okay to begin. You don't need to be perfect to come home to yourself. You only need to be brave enough to listen, kind enough to stay, and honest enough to say, "I will not abandon you again." This journey does not promise an easy road, but it promises this: you will no longer have to walk it alone, because now you are coming home, to your inner child, to yourself. Have you ever wondered why some women, the more they give, the more distant men become, while others, without trying to prove anything, still make men pursue them endlessly? The difference does not lie in appearance, nor in superficial tricks, but in how they know how to regulate their energy, creating a silent yet powerful magnetism that men cannot ignore. Carl Jung once emphasized that in a man's unconscious, desire is only awakened when there is a challenge. When everything becomes too easy, the instinct to conquer falls asleep. But when a woman knows how to take one step back at the right moment, knows how to ignore in a subtle way, a man will feel compelled to step forward, to prove his worth, and more importantly, to become a better version of himself, to keep her. In today's video, we will uncover a secret few talk about. Ignoring the right way is not coldness or manipulation, but the art of awakening a man from his comfort zone, so that he pursues you with a desire and maturity he has never shown before. Are you ready to learn how to turn silence and distance into an irresistible magnetism that makes a man unable to sit still? Number 1. Men and the principle of not treasuring what is guaranteed. Have you ever fallen into this situation? At the beginning, he cared about every detail, always eager to call, to text, and to meet you. But after some time, when you gave him your whole heart, that initial enthusiasm began to fade. Texts were no longer frequent. Dates became rare. You started to wonder if you had done something wrong, or perhaps you were not good enough. The truth is, you were not wrong. The problem lies in an unconscious mechanism in men that Carl Jung emphasized. Men often fail to treasure what is considered guaranteed. When they believe you will always be there, no matter what they do or do not do, their mind assumes that position is safe. And once it is safe, they no longer feel the need to make an effort to maintain it. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." In love, too, desire does not arise from abundance, but from the fear of losing. It is precisely uncertainty that makes a man want to hold on, to conquer, and to stay. In a Jungian therapy session, a woman shared that in the first years, her husband cared about every little detail. But when she poured all her energy into taking care of him, everything gradually became obvious and taken for granted. He no longer noticed the meals she prepared or her quiet efforts until she decided to revolve less around him and started spending time caring for herself. That change made him suddenly realize that her presence was not something to take for granted. He became more proactive again, from small gestures like asking about her day, helping with chores, to rearranging his schedule so they could go on dates he had once forgotten. Jung called this the shadow mechanism in the unconscious. People only truly appreciate something when they face the risk of losing it. In love as well, if you only cling and revolve around a man, you actually diminish your own magnetism. But if you know how to maintain a bit of distance, you reignite the desire within him. This does not mean women must be cold or play manipulative games. It is simply a way to avoid becoming too obvious in his life. When a woman confidently spends time on herself, psyche. Carl Jung believed that in the unconscious, every man holds the image of a warrior, the instinct that drives them to conquer, overcome challenges, and prove their worth. Since ancient times, men have been hunters, protectors, and fighters. It was precisely the difficulties and challenges that made them feel truly strong. Jung once said, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health." In love, this warrior does not disappear. It shows in men initiating messages, planning dates, or trying to keep the woman they love. But if love becomes too easy, the warrior in them slowly falls asleep. When they no longer feel the need to make an effort, they lose passion and desire. One man once shared with the channel that in the early days of dating, he would wake up early to drive his girlfriend to work, even though the distance was nearly 20 kilometers. He always felt like a soldier, eager to do something to prove his love and presence. But years later, when she became too predictable, always taking the initiative and revolving around him, that drive gradually vanished. He still loved her, but love no longer gave him the feeling of having to strive, and in that ease, a vague emptiness began to form. That was the moment the warrior inside him fell asleep. Jung believed that this strength only truly comes alive when there is a goal and a challenge. A warrior without a battlefield will gradually weaken and lose himself. In love, too, if a man no longer feels the need to be proactive in the relationship, he will become indifferent. In fact, many marriages and relationships stagnate simply because that proactivity has not been awakened for too long, leaving men loving out of habit rather than desire. Imagine an ancient warrior. If every battle were easy, with weak enemies and ready weapons, he would lose his skills. His muscles would wither, his spirit would cool. On the contrary, just one difficult challenge could immediately make him strong and full of fighting spirit again. In love, that challenge is not suffering, but the feeling that love is never guaranteed. The woman who maintains her mystery, who stands strong in her own world, is the one who awakens the warrior in men. This does not mean women must deliberately create difficulties or play psychological games. It is simply about living true to their values, keeping their independence and mystery. That independence makes men feel that love is not something they can neglect, but something they must continually guard. When a woman shines in her own world, she does not need to prove or fabricate scenarios. That natural strength is the greatest challenge and the most attractive thing to men. Jung emphasized that every genuine relationship requires awareness and effort. For men, the warrior archetype is the driving force that compels them to step forward. When this part is awakened, love is no longer a habit, but becomes a lifelong conquest. Therefore, remember that a little mystery, a little distance, and your steadfastness in your own world are the soil where the warrior in him rises. At that time, instead of cooling down, he will pursue you with all desire and sincerity, and love will remain as alive as in the beginning. Do you feel that the warrior in men is truly the flame that keeps love alive? Press like on this video as a reminder that men only truly live when there are challenges and effort in love. Number 3. Distinguishing wrong ignoring and right ignoring. Many women, when hearing about the idea of ignoring men, often apply it in extreme ways. They disappear completely, cut off all contact, leaving no trace. But this method often does not spark desire. Instead, it makes a man assume he has been rejected. When he feels decisively dismissed, his fighting instinct will not be awakened, but rather a defense mechanism. He will leave to protect his ego. This is wrong ignoring. By contrast, right ignoring is not disappearance, but adjusting the level of emotional presence. You no longer react immediately, no longer always place him at the center of every moment. Instead of giving too much readiness, you learn to keep just enough energetic distance for him to feel his position is not absolutely safe. And it is precisely that subtle space that awakens his fighting instinct, making him want to make efforts to regain importance. Picture two cases. In the first, A woman after a conflict decides to vanish completely. She does not reply to texts, does not answer calls, even avoids him in group gatherings. At first, he may be confused, but after a few days he assumes this is rejection. Instead of keeping, he retreats, telling himself it is best to let go. In his unconscious, he feels the battle has ended, and the warrior instinct no longer has reason to exist. In the second case, a woman after realizing she gave too much chooses to adjust. She does not disappear. She still replies to messages, but not immediately. She still cares, but no longer revolves around him all day. Instead of always waiting for him to plan, she spends time with friends, with work, with her own hobbies. He begins to notice the change. He sees his presence is no longer the absolute center, and a small fear forms. Tells a man to step up to fill it. But for ignoring to become art, it must rest on a deeper foundation, the principle of tension of opposites that Carl Jung emphasized. Jung believed that people do not grow by eliminating opposites, but by learning to live in balance with them. In love, attraction does not arise from always agreeing or being together every moment. It arises from the interplay of two opposites, closeness yet personal space, giving yet knowing when to stop, to preserve value. It is precisely this near-far that keeps love from becoming dull, but always fresh and alive. In literature, we clearly see this in Pride and Prejudice. Elizabeth Bennet and Darcy did not come together through a smooth path. Their relationship was full of contradictions, pride and prejudice, feelings and reason. It was this tension that pulled them toward each other more powerfully. If Elizabeth had been too easy, or Darcy had been completely certain from the start, the conquest would have ended quickly and love would have lost its magnetism. This shows that in love, a little distance, a little not so easy, is the catalyst that fuels desire. In real life too, a couple that always agrees, always together, without any personal space, it may sound peaceful, but over time, the relationship becomes bland. because the man no longer feels the need to strive. On the contrary, another couple that keeps their own lives sometimes disagree, sometimes create gaps for the other to step into. These differences make love alive, and the man always feels he must pursue to keep his place. A young couple once shared that when they first dated, they nearly melted into each other. They texted for hours daily, always spent weekends together, until there was no room left for their individual lives. At first, they thought this was ideal love, but after a year, suffocation set in. He began to lose his drive to conquer, and she felt the relationship was dull. It was not until she decided to see him less and spend time volunteering, traveling with friends, and learning a new instrument that balance returned. He began to feel he had to make efforts to be present in her life again, and she rediscovered the richness within herself. It was this near-far, this give-hold dynamic that revived the magnetism they thought was lost. Jung called this the tension of opposites. If you always give non-stop, a man will think you are always there and gradually lose appreciation. If you disappear completely, he will see it as rejection and withdraw. But when you create just enough balance, sometimes close, sometimes stepping back, he will never feel absolutely safe. It is precisely the feeling of possibly losing you that makes him want to hold tightly, and his instinct to conquer is awakened. Remember that right ignoring is not coldness nor manipulation. It is the art of maintaining balance between two extremes, like a string, too slack and no sound, too tight and it breaks. Only when kept at the right tension does it create music. Love is the same. When you keep some mystery, some distance, while still giving enough presence, you create the perfect tension for love to resonate. In thousands of relationships fading due to predictability, only a few women are wise enough to understand that love needs tension of opposites to remain alive. If you believe that the balance between closeness and distance is the key to lasting love, leave a comment. I choose to keep balance. As a reminder to yourself that love is only truly beautiful when both are tested and both grow. And that is when a man pursues you in a way he never has before. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When two people meet in love, it is tension of opposites that creates transformation. And when you know how to ignore the right way, not only is the man's instinct to conquer awakened, but you too become a deeper, freer, and more attractive version of yourself in that relationship. Once you understand the art of keeping the tension of opposites, the next step is knowing how to create just enough of an emotional deficit so the man has to make an effort to prove his role in your emotional world. Number 5. Creating an emotional deficit. In love, what men crave is not only to be loved, but the feeling that they have a role in a woman's emotional world. When you give too much, doing everything to make him feel complete, gradually, he no longer needs to prove his worth. In his unconscious, he loses the battlefield where he can affirm, "I matter." Carl Jung once wrote, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman." In that image, a man does not only find someone to love, but also a mirror reflecting his own strength. But if a woman constantly offers everything, he only has the role of a recipient. The masculine ego begins to feel empty. This is when the emotional deficit becomes fertile ground. When you revolve less around him, when you hold back energy to care for yourself, a gap appears. That gap is not simply fear of losing you, but deeper. Him out of his comfort zone to act. And when he does, love is no longer just a habit, but a conscious choice. He decides to keep you in the most important place of his heart. That is also when you see a clear difference. Instead of you chasing and clinging, he becomes the one who steps forward, finding every way to prove his presence. And this reversal is the clearest evidence of the power of ignoring the right way, making him pursue you as never before, with passion and maturity. Number 6. Practical application. 5 steps to ignoring the right way. After understanding the principle of tension of opposites and the power of creating an emotional deficit, the natural question is, how can you apply it daily in a subtle and sustainable way? Because if theory remains only in awareness, love will hardly change. You need concrete actions, small but steady steps, so you can both maintain dignity and skillfully awaken the warrior instinct in men. And once these steps become part of daily rhythm, you will see love not only revived, but transformed into a new journey, where he never stops pursuing to keep you. Step 1. Gradually reduce emotional availability. One mistake that makes women lose magnetism is always reacting instantly, always showing availability in every situation. Ignoring the right way does not start with disappearance, but by reducing haste. It is like a piece of music. If the melody is all climax, the listener quickly tires. It is the pauses, the silent notes, that give music depth. Love, too, when you are less immediate in reactions, men feel the absence and yearn to fill it. Instead of replying to texts immediately, give yourself private time, then respond gently. Instead of pouring all energy into pleasing him, choose a more balanced approach. This is the starting point for him to stop assuming you are always there and begin learning to take initiative. Step 2. Redirect energy towards self-development. Carl Jung stressed that a person only becomes whole when they return to their true self. In love, many women lose themselves by pouring all energy into men, and at that point, they also lose their deepest allure. Right ignoring is not just stepping back in love, but stepping forward toward yourself. Invest in learning, experiences, health, and other social connections. When you live fully for yourself, you become rich and colorful, and men see a vibrant world they must enter with all effort. Step 3. Maintain an element of mystery. Women often think lasting love requires sharing everything. But the truth is, it is the unknown spaces that keep attraction alive. Jung said the unconscious is filled with undecoded symbols, and it is precisely this mystery that stimulates imagination. In practice, mystery is not hiding or pretending, but not having to explain everything, not exposing all feelings instantly. Let men have the chance to discover you themselves. Remember, a good book never reveals its ending up front. The reader is drawn in because there are layers to explore. A woman is the same. When you keep part of yourself, a man never feels absolutely safe, and that drives him to keep pursuing. Step 4. Preserve dignity and composure. Right ignoring loses value if it becomes sulking or manipulation. The true art lies in composure and dignity. When you choose silence or step back, do it with calm energy, without resentment, without drama. Men are more sensitive to energy than you think. Distance filled with resentment only makes him defensive. But calm steadfastness, like a mountain standing tall, makes him self-reflect and realize he must step up to be worthy. This also protects you, not losing dignity through impulsive reactions, but nurturing inner strength. And it is precisely that strength which sparks the strongest desire to conquer in men. Step 5. Persevere in sustaining change. The hardest part is not starting, but sustaining. Many women, after applying right ignoring, receive renewed attention from men, but soon fall back into old patterns, always available, always revolving around him. And so, the cycle repeats. Right ignoring only works when it becomes a long-term lifestyle, a balance between loving him and loving yourself. Perseverance is the key for men to understand that this love must be nurtured continuously, that his place is never guaranteed. One woman shared that she used to let her boyfriend decide everything, where to eat, weekend plans, even vacations. When she realized that made him passive, she changed. She started creating her own choices, and immediately he paid more attention, becoming proactive again. But the important part was not his initial reaction, but her perseverance in maintaining the new rhythm. Even when he became attentive again, she did not return to old habits of total dependence. She kept her independence. This consistency made him realize her change was not temporary, and if he wanted to keep the relationship, he too had to sustain long-term effort. Thanks to that, their love not only revived, but became more mature and lasting. These 5 steps are not tricks to control men, but a journey for you to become your fullest, most magnetic self. Right ignoring is to active giver. One man shared about his girlfriend. Before, she often turned down big career opportunities just to have more time with him. Every choice revolved around their love and his life. But when she dared to take on a challenging project and poured herself into her career, the whole picture changed. He realized that if he stayed passive, she still had a vibrant world to live in without him. That determination forced him to step up, no longer just present, but more active, more engaged. Their love, as a result, was no longer easy familiarity, but a journey where both grew. When women keep independence, mystery, and dignity, they not only protect their hearts, but also push men to mature in love. Think of love as a fire. If you constantly throw in wood, it may flare up too quickly and then die out. But if you add in moderation at the right times, leaving space for it to breathe, it burns steadily and lastingly. Right ignoring is the same skillful adjustment, so the flame of love does not die, but stays warm, making men step toward you, pursuing you with all passion and maturity. Jungian psychology calls this an energy shift in the unconscious, meaning love always requires balance between two sides. When one changes, the other must change too. If a woman no longer revolves around a man constantly, he is forced to be more proactive to keep the bond. The important thing is, this change is not manipulation, but a way for a woman to assert her value. She does not use coldness to punish, but steadiness to remind. Love lasts only when both make effort. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." When a woman dares to return to her true self, she not only finds her own worth, but also creates a natural magnetism that compels a man to rise. He does not chase out of fear of losing her, but because he wants to be present in the radiant, vibrant world she created. And at that moment, love enters a more mature phase. No longer dependency, but mutual magnetism, where both grow and affirm themselves. What you need to remember is, the psychological effect of women shifting energy does not come from tricks, but from the truth that she has recentered her life. When you stop making men your only source of life, you become an independent universe. And men, unconsciously, will be drawn toward that universe, not by your lack, but by your abundance. And that is the silent power of ignoring the right way, not vanishing to scare him, but pulling energy back to become radiant and alive. At that moment, the man cannot sit still, but must step forward toward you, not to possess, but to be worthy of walking beside you. A woman who knows how to ignore the right way is not cold nor manipulative. She is someone who knows her own rhythm, when to step forward, when to step back, so love never becomes easy comfort, but always alive. What makes her different is not trying to control men, but how she redefines her own value, standing firm in her world, so that anyone who wants to stay must make an effort and grow with her. And if you have ever wondered, how can I make a man pursue me with all his desire? The answer does not lie in endless giving, but in knowing when to stop, keeping your dignity and your own light. When you do that, love is no longer a guessing game, but becomes a journey where he must step up, prove himself, and be worthy. If you see yourself in what you just heard, share this video so other women can awaken and reclaim their power. Press subscribe to continue this journey with us, because the path with Jung does not end at love, but is the journey of becoming the most beautiful, magnetic version of yourself.